The dawn broke softly over Ireland, as it always does, though this morning was different. The world was still, its breath held between the whispers of the earth and sky. The golden light touched the land gently, spilling over hills and fields like a mother's hand smoothing away the wrinkles of an old quilt. The air was fresh with the scent of rain, still damp from the storm that had passed through the night before, a storm like no other, a thunderous clash of gods, the crack of battle shaking the very bones of the earth. But now, after the storm, the land was still, the battle's echoes fading like the last tremors of a passing wave. Ireland breathed again, slow and steady, as if it were waking from a long troubled dream. The sky, a soft pale blue, stretched wide and endless, carrying with it a promise: the world would heal. It was in this silence, this moment of calm, that the Dagda walked alone, broad of shoulder and round of belly, his stride heavy yet gentle, like the rhythm of the land itself. He moved across the earth with a grace born of long years, the kind of grace that comes not from a hurry, but from a deep understanding of the world around him. His feet, broad and heavy, pressed softly into the damp soil. He could feel the pulse of the land beneath him, the heartbeat of the earth, slow and steady as it returned to itself. It had been a long time since the land had known peace, since the bloodshed of war had left its marks on the soil. But now it was healing, as it always does, as it always will. The Dagda, the good god of the earth and plenty, the keeper of the land's abundant life, walked with purpose. His figure was large and solid, his presence like a moving piece of the earth, not imposing but comforting, like the warmth of a full hearth. His hands, weathered from centuries of creation and care, reached down to touch the earth, smoothing over the soil, coaxing life back into the world with each gentle caress. The land stirred beneath his hands, as if it too recognized his touch, the touch of the one who had always been its guardian. There was no rush in the Dagda's steps. He had no need to hurry. The work of the world, the care of it, was not something to be rushed. It was a slow, loving process, one that took time, patience, and a deep understanding of the rhythms of life. And the Dagda understood those rhythms better than any other god. He knew when to sow and when to wait, when to nurture and when to let the land rest. The wind stirred through the tall grass, and the sound of it was like a soft murmuring lullaby caressing the earth, as if the land itself were sighing in relief. The sky, once heavy with clouds and the weight of battle, had cleared, and in its place was a soft light that bathed everything in a warm golden glow. The Dagda smiled softly to himself, his face round and kind, the lines around his eyes deep from years of laughter and good meals shared by firelight. His broad, muscular frame, clothed in simple, earth-toned garments, stood tall against the backdrop of the healing world. He had always been a god of abundance, of life, of the earth's endless gifts, but today he was something more. Today he was the healer, the one who would mend what had been broken, not with force or fire, but with a quiet, steady presence. He was the warmth that would return to the hearth after a long, cold night. He was the hand that would guide the world back toward its natural balance. The land whispered to him, and he listened. The trees reached up their limbs toward him, their leaves trembling in the soft breeze, and the rivers, still swollen from the rains, sang their songs of renewal as they wound their way through the valleys. The earth was alive again, and the Dagda could feel its pulse, strong and steady beneath him. His hands moved over the land, and in their wake, the grass grew greener, the flowers bloomed brighter, and the trees grew taller. The earth was healing, and it was all because of him, not through any grand gesture, not through any great power or force, but through the simple act of care. It was the care of a god who understood the value of small things, who knew that the world was not built in a single moment, but in 1,000 tiny moments, in the press of soil between fingers, in the soft murmur of the wind through the grass, in the warmth of the sun on your face. As he walked, the earth seemed to come alive under his touch, the soil rich and full of life. The birds returned to their nests, the deer stepped cautiously from the trees, and the flowers stretched their petals toward the light. The land was returning to its fullness, its abundance, and all was right with the world again. And yet, in the midst of all this renewal, There was a sadness that lingered in the air, a quiet grief that clung to the edges of the earth. The war had left scars deep and lasting on both the land and its people. The Dagda could feel it, the weight of those losses, though they were not his own. He had not fought in the battle, but he had watched, and in his heart he felt the pain of it. But that was not the way of his gods. The way of the Dagda was not one of vengeance or anger, but of healing, of mending what had been torn apart, of bringing life to where there had been none. He stood for a moment, taking in the world around him, feeling the earth's pulse beneath his feet, the soil, the air, the wind, the sky. All of it was part of him. All of it was his to protect, his to care for. He had never asked for this responsibility, but it had been his from the beginning, as ancient and unchanging as the earth itself. And so, with a deep, contented sigh, the Dagda continued his walk. His hands, broad and weathered, reached down to touch the earth, and in their touch the land was healed once more. If this story has brought you a moment of warmth or calm, let your support be known with a gentle click to subscribe. And more myths will come to find you. The world, it seems, will always need a little tending, a little care. And the Dagda, the good god, would never leave it wanting. As the world healed beneath his hands, the silence of the earth began to shift. It was a sound that was born not of the wind or the waters, but from within, the Dagda himself, the sound of his laughter. It came softly at first, like a ripple over a calm pond, but soon it grew, warm and rich, filling the land like the song of a summer breeze. It was a laughter that had not been heard for many months, a laughter that carried with it the promise of renewal, of hope, and of joy. For the Dagda, laughter was as much a part of life as the earth itself. It was in the wind that rustled the trees, in the streams that danced over stones, in the fields where the flowers bloomed. Laughter was the pulse of the world, the rhythm of life itself, and the Dagda, with his great round belly and his heart full of joy, was the one who brought it back. The gods, who had known only the silence of war and the echoes of sorrow, now stood still, hearing that laughter for the first time in so long. It was a gift not just to them, but to all of Ireland. The land, still dark with the shadows of the past, suddenly felt the warmth of that laughter seep into its bones, like sunlight breaking through a storm cloud. It was the sound of life returning, a sound that could never be ignored, never be forgotten. The Dagda walked among the people, his voice carrying across the land, lifting hearts that had long been weighed down by the trials of the world. His laughter was not the loud, boisterous kind that threatened to overwhelm, but the kind that was full of ease, of warmth. It was the laughter that comes when you're comfortable in your own skin, when the world around you feels like home. And so he laughed, and he spoke, and he shared. He shared his stories, tales of days long past, of battles fought and victories won, of feasts filled with food and drink and friends. The people gathered around him, drawn by the warmth of his presence, and as they listened, their hearts lifted, their spirits brightened. They found in his words the comfort they had longed for, the reassurance that no matter how dark the days might seem, there was always a way back to the light. He was not a god of great displays of power, but a god of the simple pleasures, the ones that grounded a person, that reminded them of the joy of being alive. His laughter was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, joy could be found, that the world, though it may sometimes seem heavy, was full of beauty, and beauty could be found in the most unexpected places. And so he sat with the people, in the quiet of his laughter, the Dagda, broad-shouldered and round of belly, his beard catching the firelight, carried with him a gift that spoke not just of abundance, but of sustenance in its purest, most loving form. It was the gift of the cauldron of plenty, a cauldron that never ran dry, no matter how many hands reached into it, no matter how many mouths called for food. It was a gift that had been passed down to him, a gift that had been crafted by the hands of the earth itself, forged in the deep, fertile belly of the world. The cauldron was a symbol of the goodness of the Dagda, not the good of some distant deity whose presence was felt only in the heavens above, but the good of the earth beneath our feet, the good that grows in the soil, that ripens in the sun, that is shared from hand to hand, from heart to heart. The cauldron was not a grand thing, not a shining treasure in the way that a jewel might be, but it was everything that was needed. It was round, deep, and made of heavy stone worn smooth with age and use. its surface marked by the hands that had touched it. It had a warmth to it, a softness, as though it had been shaped by the very hands of the earth to hold the fruits of the land, the grains, the meats, the vegetables, and the water that had come from the rivers. Its magic, if it could be called that, was not in the spectacle of it, but in the simple fact that it gave freely, endlessly, without hesitation. When the Dagda lifted the lid of the cauldron, the aroma of the food within would fill the air, rich and earthy, full of the warmth of the hearth, the sweetness of the harvest. It was the scent of home, the scent of a meal shared among friends, the scent of abundance given freely without limit. The people would gather, as they always did, around the Dagda's cauldron, their eyes wide with wonder, their hands eager to be fed. And when they reached into the cauldron, their fingers would pull out food, not just any food, but the food that would fill them, body and soul. The grain, the bread, the stew, the fish, the fruits, all were there in endless supply, as though the cauldron itself had the power to create abundance from nothing. The Dagda would smile, watching them, his laughter like the melody of a song, soft and gentle, his round belly trembling with mirth as he watched friends and strangers alike find solace at his side. "Eat and be filled, for there is enough for all," he would say, his voice warm as a kitchen fire. But the gift of the cauldron was not only about feeding the body, it was about feeding the heart as well. For in the food, there was not just nourishment, but love. Love for the land, love for the people, love for the simple everyday act of caring for one another. The cauldron was a gift that spoke of connection, of sharing, of a world where nothing went to waste, where there was always enough, where no one was ever left hungry. It was said that the cauldron had once been a gift to the Dagda from the very earth, given to him in recognition of his deep and abiding care for the land. In return, he would offer it to those who needed it most, the farmers whose fields had been scorched by the flames of war, the children who had gone hungry, the elders whose strength had waned. The cauldron was a promise that there would always be enough, that the land would always provide for those who cared for it. And so it was that the Dagda would travel the land, his cauldron at his side, sharing its gifts with all who crossed his path. He would find the weary traveller, the hungry farmer, the tired mother, and with a simple gesture, a lifting of the lid, he would offer them the bounty of the earth. And in that act of kindness, the world was made whole again. No longer were there those who went without, no longer were there those who knew the pain of hunger. In the Dagda's presence, there was only abundance, only love, only the quiet hum of life returning. For the cauldron was more than just a tool for feeding the body. It was a symbol of the Dagda's endless generosity, his belief that all things in life, all gifts, should be shared freely without hesitation. He was the god who understood that life was not meant to be hoarded or guarded, but given freely, given to those who needed it most. And in this, he taught the people of Ireland that to live well was to live with an open hand, to share what you had, to offer your abundance to the world. And so, the people ate, their bellies full and their hearts light. And when the cauldron was empty, as it inevitably was, the Dagda would smile, for he knew that it would never stay empty for long. It would always be filled again, just as the earth would always return to itself, just as the sun would always rise to warm the day. The cauldron, like the land, like the Dagda himself, would never run dry. And in that the people found their comfort, for they knew that there was always enough, as long as they had each other, as long as they had the earth, and as long as they had the Dagda's love. The cauldron, with its endless abundance, was not the only gift the Dagda carried with him. For there was another, a gift that spoke not of nourishment for the body, but of nourishment for the soul. It was the harp, an instrument of such power and beauty that it was said to hold the very essence of the world itself. The harp was made of the wood of the sacred trees, and its strings hummed with the voices of the earth and sky, resonating with the rhythms of life. This harp, unlike any other, could play not just melodies, but the seasons themselves. The three songs it played, the song of joy, the song of sorrow, and the song of sleep, were more than mere tunes. They were the music of the world's heartbeat, the pulse of the earth, the ebb and flow of time itself. When the Dagda's fingers touched the strings, the world would change. The Dagda sat in the soft light of dusk, his great form steady as a mountain, his round face calm with the wisdom of the earth. His large hands, calloused yet gentle, moved across the harp's strings with surprising grace, the notes trembling like laughter caught in sunlight. The song of joy would bring the warmth of spring, coaxing flowers from the soil and filling the air with the sweet scent of blossoms. The trees would stretch their limbs toward the sun, their leaves soft and green. The rivers would sing with the rush of melting snow, and the earth would hum with the energy of new life. And when the Dagda played the song of sorrow, the earth would respond. The wind would shift, cooling the air, and the leaves would turn golden, then brown, as if the very trees were weeping. The harvest would come, heavy and rich, as though the land was offering its gifts one last time before the cold took hold. The days would grow shorter, the nights longer, and the world would slow, gathering its strength for the coming stillness of winter. But it was the song of sleep, the third of the Dagda's songs that brought peace. It was a lullaby, a soft and gentle melody that would carry the world into rest. The winds would calm, the waters would still, and the earth would settle into the quiet rhythm of night. It was the song that carried the promise of renewal, for even in sleep, the world was preparing for the next cycle, the next dance of the seasons. The song of sleep was not a song of finality, but of transformation, of becoming something new. These three songs, joy, sorrow, and sleep, were the cycles of life itself. They were the rhythms that governed the earth and the heavens, the dance of day and night, of life and death, of growth and decay. And the Dagda, with his great hands and tender heart, was the one who played them. He was the keeper of the seasons, the one who ensured that the world would always move forward, always shift from one moment to the next. As he played, his fingers moved across the strings, and the world would respond. The air would shimmer with the magic of his music, and the earth would stir beneath his feet. The seasons themselves seemed to bend to the power of the harp, as if the very fabric of time was woven by his hand. But it was not just the land that changed when the Dagda played. His songs reached deep into the hearts of those who listened. The farmers who toiled in the fields would feel the promise of the harvest in the song of joy. The weary traveller, lost in the dark of night, would find comfort in the song of sleep, a soothing balm for the soul. The ones who had known hardship, who had felt the weight of the world on their shoulders, would hear in the song of sorrow the quiet understanding that, in time, all things must pass. The music of the Dagda's harp was a gift, not just to the earth, but to the people. It was a reminder that the world was always in motion, always changing, always growing. And it was a gift that carried with it the knowledge that, no matter what the seasons brought, whether joy or sorrow, there was always a way forward, always a way to move through the world with grace. The Dagda would often sit by the river, his harp resting across his lap, and play for those who came to listen. The sound of the harp would echo through the valley, soft and rich like the sound of the earth itself singing. The people would gather, their faces lifted to the sky, their hearts open to the music. And in that moment, they would know the truth of the world, that the seasons with all their changes were part of the great unbroken rhythm of life, that no matter how dark the days might seem, the sun would always rise again. That even in sorrow, there was a beauty, a quiet grace that would carry them forward. And so, the Dagda continued to play, his fingers dancing across the strings, weaving the music that held the world together. His songs were the heartbeat of the earth, the rhythm of the seasons, the breath of life itself. And with each note the land would sing along, the trees would sway, and the rivers would hum in time. Even the greatest of gods, it is said, are not without love. And the Dagda, though he carried the abundance of the earth in his hands, was no exception. His heart, deep and vast as the rivers that wound through the land, had room for many things. But none would leave a mark upon him as deeply as Boann, the goddess of the river that flowed through the heart of Ireland, the very river whose waters shaped the land, whose current carried with it the spirit of life itself. Boann, with her long, flowing hair and eyes that sparkled like the river's surface under the moon, was a goddess of grace and mystery. She moved like water, ever-changing, never still, and yet always constant. Her laughter was the sound of rivers rushing over stones, of water falling from great heights, of streams winding their way through valleys, filling the earth with their sweet, cool song. It was said that Boann and the Dagda shared a love as deep as the rivers, a love that was born not from the mundane rhythms of mortal life, but from the very essence of the land itself. It was a forbidden love in a way, for Boann was the wife of another, a god of the sun, and their union was not meant to be. But love, as the Dagda knew well, does not always follow the rules. It comes like the rain, unbidden and free, falling wherever it may, touching all that it can. One day, as the sun dipped low in the sky, casting the earth in its golden glow, the Dagda, broad and solid, his round belly cradled by his simple tunic, walked beside the river. The air was warm and soft, and the scent of wildflowers filled his senses. It was a time of peace, a time of quiet, and the world seemed to pause for a moment, held in the balance between day and night. And there, at the river's edge, he saw Boann. She stood like a vision, the light of the sun reflecting off the water, making her hair glow like silver threads caught in the wind. The river flowed beside her, whispering its eternal song, as though it too recognized the beauty of this moment. The Dagda, always quick with laughter and song, fell silent. His heart stirred in a way it never had before. It was not just the beauty of Boann, though she was the very image of the river's grace. It was something deeper, something that connected them. A quiet understanding of the land, of the pulse of the world, that only gods such as they could feel. Boann turned to him, and her smile was like the sun's first light on the water, gentle and warming. They stood there for a moment, the world around them holding its breath, the river flowing on as it had for ages, unaware of the tender exchange between the two gods. It was then that the Dagda spoke, his voice low and warm, like the rumble of distant thunder. Boann, river goddess, I have watched you, and I have seen how your waters bring life to this land. Your river winds its way through Ireland like the veins of the earth itself, feeding the soil, nourishing the creatures, and shaping the very heart of this land. And I too love this land. It is in my care, in my hands, that the earth grows and flourishes. But in you, Boann, I see a beauty that no river, no field, no tree can match. It is the beauty of life itself. Boann's gaze softened, and she took a step closer to him, the water moving around her feet like a lover's embrace. Her voice, like the river's song, was soft and full of knowing. Dagda, you are the keeper of the earth. You bring life to the soil, to the trees, to the very world around us, but you are also a god of kindness, of laughter, of warmth. In you, I see not just the earth, but the heart of it, the heart that beats with joy, with love, with hope. It is a rare thing to find a god who is as much of the earth as you are, who moves through it as though he were part of it. And in that moment they understood each other. They were not just gods of the earth and the river, not just keepers of the land's abundance. They were two forces of nature, two hearts that beat as one with the world around them. They were as much a part of each other as they were of the land they loved. Their love was quiet, tender, and full of longing. It was a love that, though forbidden, could not be denied, for it was as natural as the rivers that carved the valleys and the winds that swept over the hills. It was not a love born of possessiveness or desire, but of deep connection, a connection that transcended time and place, that wove them together like the threads of the earth itself. From their union came the Boyne, the great river that would flow across Ireland, carrying with it the essence of their love. The Boyne, like the land itself, would carry life, and though it would carry their story, their forbidden love, it would also carry their legacy, their understanding of the world, their care for the earth. But as with all things, love is not without its costs. The Dagda knew that the union with Boann could not last forever, that their love, as sweet and deep as it was, would eventually be pulled apart by the tides of fate. The river, like the seasons, would flow on, and in its wake would remain the memory of a love that had shaped the world. And yet, even in the loss, the Dagda found peace, for he had known love, and in knowing it, he had learned what it truly meant to care for something. To give of yourself without hesitation, to offer your heart to the world. The love he had shared with Boann was not something to mourn, but something to cherish, for it had made the land more beautiful, more alive. In the end, the Dagda would continue to walk the earth, his laughter ringing through the air, his hands in the soil, always working, always giving. But in his heart there would always be a place for Boann, the river goddess who had taught him what it meant to love deeply, to give freely, and to understand the rhythm of the world. There is no greater joy than the company of friends, and the Dagda knew this better than any god. For though he was the keeper of the earth, the bringer of abundance and the wielder of mighty songs, he was also a god of the hearth, the one who gathered others around him, who shared his laughter, his stories, and his gifts freely. He was, at his heart, a friend, and when it was time to celebrate the good things in life, the Dagda would always bring people together, filling their bellies and lifting their spirits. One such time was the Feast of Friendship, a gathering held in the heart of the year, when the harvest had been gathered and the days grew long with the golden warmth of the late summer. It was a time for the gods to come together, to lay down their burdens and simply enjoy one another's company. And it was the Dagda who would always host this feast, for no one knew better how to cook and care for the souls of those who shared his table. On this particular evening the air was thick with the smell of roasting meats and freshly baked bread. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a sky painted in shades of amber and rose. The firelight flickered in the centre of the clearing, casting warm shadows on the faces of those gathered. The gods, mighty and powerful, stood around the fire, their faces softened by the warmth of the flames and the promise of a good meal. The Dagda stood at the centre of it all, his great belly round with the satisfaction of a god who had spent the day preparing. He had laboured over the food, as he always did, with care and love, knowing that the heart of any gathering was not just the food, but the sharing of it. He had no need for grandiosity or extravagance. What he offered was simple, wholesome, and rich in the way only the earth can be. His table was laden with platters of tender meat, roasted vegetables, loaves of bread still warm from the oven, and bowls brimming with fresh fruit and cream. It was a feast that spoke not of wealth or status, but of generosity, of abundance shared freely, and of the joy found in gathering together. And gather they did, the gods, the spirits of the earth, the Fae, and all those who called Ireland home. They came from far and wide, drawn by the promise of the Dagda's hospitality, and by the warmth that seemed to emanate from him, as if he were the very sun itself. And as they sat down at the table, there was no hierarchy, no division between them. The Dagda did not sit as a ruler, but as a companion. He moved among them, his great laughter ringing out as he offered food and drink, as he shared stories and jokes, as he listened to the tales of others. For the Dagda was a god who knew that the true gift of a feast was not in the food but in the company. He knew that the laughter shared over a meal could heal wounds, that the stories told beside the fire could bind souls together. And so, as the gods ate and drank, their hearts lightened, their burdens forgotten, if only for a moment. The feast was not just a time of eating, but a time of remembering the beauty of life, of finding joy in the simplest of things. The evening passed slowly, the hours slipping away like the river's current, as the firelight danced and the laughter echoed through the night. The Dagda told stories of days long past, of the heroes and queens who had walked the land before them, of the battles fought and the victories won. His voice, rich and warm, filled the air, and those around the fire leaned in, hanging on every word. There was something about the way the Dagda told his stories, with a sparkle in his eye, a hint of mischief in his tone, that made them seem alive, as though the very fabric of the world was woven from the tales he told. And there was music too. The Dagda, always quick with his harp, would lift the instrument from his side, and with a few tender notes the feast would be filled with the sound of his songs. The harp of the seasons would play its melodies, the song of joy, the song of sorrow, and the song of sleep. And in the music the world would shift, the firelight would grow warmer, the faces of those gathered would glow, and even the trees, standing silent at the edge of the clearing, seemed to sway in time with the rhythm. There was one song in particular that the Dagda loved to play during the feast, the Song of Friendship. It was a song that had no words, no need for them. It was a melody that spoke of the bond between hearts, the warmth of the hearth, the joy of being together. As the Dagda played, the music seemed to lift everyone's spirits, as though it carried the very essence of friendship with it, the promise that no matter the trials the world might bring, they would always have each other, always have the light of this fire to guide them through. The feast was a celebration of life in all its simplicity and complexity. The gods, who ruled over vast lands and mighty forces, were not so different from the people who tended the fields or gathered the herbs. They were all in the end part of the same world, part of the same rhythm, and it was in moments like these, in shared meals, in laughter, in the warmth of the fire, that they could all come together, setting aside their roles and their powers, and simply be human for a time. And so the night stretched on, as the fire burned low and the last of the food was eaten. The Dagda, full of mirth and contentment, looked around at the faces of those gathered, his heart full. For though he had the power to shape the earth itself, to heal the land, to control the seasons, it was moments like this, when friends sat together in peace, that reminded him of the true gift of life, to be with those you love, to share what you have, and to feel for just a moment that everything in the world is right. Though the Dagda's heart was large, his wisdom even greater, and his laughter filled every corner of the world, he was not only a god of joy and abundance, he was also a teacher. His lessons, like his music, were subtle, like the changing of the seasons, slow and inevitable, but full of power nonetheless. And there was one who came to him, seeking his wisdom, a young god who was destined to bring light into the world, yet had yet to understand the true weight of that light. His name was Lug. Lug, the Shining One, the god of the sun and the crafts, was beloved by all, his radiance unmatched. He was young, full of ambition and brilliance, his mind quick and sharp, his heart eager to prove his worth to those around him. He was a god of action, of doing, of bringing the light of day into the world, and yet in his brightness there was something that he did not yet see, something the Dagda knew all too well. One day, Lu came to the Dagda, his face set with purpose, his voice brimming with excitement. "Dagda, I seek your counsel," he said, his golden hair glowing in the light of the setting sun. "I have done so much, and the people look to me for answers, for strength. But I feel there is more to this world, more I must understand. I wish to learn, to know what it truly means to be a god of light." The Dagda, with his deep, knowing eyes and broad, warm face, looked at Lu, his round belly visible beneath his simple tunic. He nodded slowly, as if he had been waiting for this moment. "Ah, Lu," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You're a god of great power, of brilliance. The sun rises and sets at your command, and all in the world looks to you for guidance. But the light you give, as bright as it is, will not last forever, and you, my young friend, must learn to share it, not keep it for yourself." Lug, ever eager, furrowed his brow. "What do you mean? My light is what guides the world, what brings life to the earth. Surely it must be kept strong, kept bright." The Dagda smiled softly, his round face shaded by the last of the sun. He set his large, calloused hands upon the earth between them, as if to remind the young god of the steadiness beneath all things. "Aye, Lu, your light is precious, and your strength is needed by all. But light, my young friend, is not meant to burn alone. It must be shared, for in sharing it, you will find it not only grows, but it multiplies. It is not enough to stand alone in the sunlight. You must learn to cast your light upon others, to nurture it in their hearts, for that is how it endures." Lug, though wise in many ways, listened closely. He saw the lines of years in the Dagda's face, the depth of laughter in his eyes, and the way his belly rose and fell with steady breath, a rhythm like the land itself. In that moment he understood the lesson was not one of giving away power, but of teaching others how to kindle their own light. The Dagda continued, his voice soft as the rustle of grain. "Teach them your crafts, Lug. Teach them to mend, to build, to play, and to heal. In every hand that learns, your light will live on. In every hearth that warms because of your teaching, your fire will burn longer than any single day." Lug bowed, the glow of the sunset catching the edges of his hair. "I will, Dagda," he said, and in his eyes there was the quiet resolve of one who'd been touched by a greater truth. And as Lug walked away to begin his teaching, the Dagda's laughter rose again, deep, comforting, and very human, a sound that seemed to bless the very soil beneath their feet. As the seasons turned and the years passed, the Dagda, like the earth itself, began to feel the weight of time. Though he was ageless, unchanging in his essence, even the gods must rest, and even the most abundant earth must, in time, return to its slumber. There came a moment, quiet and inevitable, when the Dagda knew his time of labouring among the living would slow, that his work of healing the world would soften into stillness. The pulse of the earth, though always steady, could not be hurried, and neither could the coming of the rest. It was in the quiet of a late autumn afternoon, when the air had turned crisp and the scent of falling leaves lingered on the wind, that the Dagda felt the pull of the earth beneath him. The rhythm of the seasons, that constant song he had long played, whispered to him now. The winds seemed gentler, the sun lower in the sky, and the rivers that had once rushed with energy now flowed with a soothing quietness. The world, it seemed, was preparing for rest. And so, he too began to feel the calling of sleep. The Dagda's steps grew slower, more deliberate, as if the earth itself were drawing him back. His great form, broad and round of belly, moved through the fading light like the last warmth of autumn. His great hands, once so full of life, seemed to pulse with the quiet rhythm of the land, as though every fingertip could feel the heartbeat of the soil, the soft breath of the world beneath him. There was a peace in this, a surrender not to death, but to something deeper, a returning, a becoming part of the earth in a way that only the oldest of gods could understand. He walked slowly and steadily toward the hills of his homeland, the hills where the roots of the world lay deep, where the winds spoke in whispers of time long past. There, nestled beneath the earth, were the places where gods and spirits could rest, where the cycle of life and death met in gentle harmony. And as the Dagda approached the hills, the land seemed to open before him, as though it had always known that he would return. The soil, rich and warm, welcomed his feet, and the trees with their branches heavy with fruit seemed to bow in reverence to the god who had tended them for so long. The air was filled with the scent of the earth's final gift before the frost came, the last of the flowers, the ripening fruit, the steady hum of life slowing down. He reached the hilltop where the stones were placed in circles, where the winds spoke softly of the earth's secrets. There, the Dagda sat down, feeling the ground beneath him, feeling the way it rose and fell like a great slumbering creature. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, letting the rhythm of the earth guide him. In that moment he was no longer the Dagda, the god who laughed and healed and played his mighty harp. He was simply part of the land, part of the soil, part of the eternal pulsing rhythm of all things. The wind, now soft and slow, wrapped around him like a blanket. The song of the world was now quieter, more intimate, as though the earth itself were humming a lullaby to the Dagda, calling him to rest, to sleep, to become part of it once more. The very earth seemed to embrace him, its heartbeat slowing in time with his own. And so, with a deep peaceful sigh, the Dagda lay down upon the ground, his great body sinking into the soft earth. His arms, once so strong, relaxed at his sides, and his breath, deep and steady, matched the rhythm of the world. The land, like a mother, took him in, cradling him as he drifted towards sleep. It was not a death he was entering, but a gentle slumber, the kind of rest that comes when the body and the earth are at peace, when the work is done, and the soul is ready to return to the world it loves. The Dagda did not fear the rest that came to him, for he knew that the earth would always hold him. His legacy, his laughter, his songs, they would remain in the wind, in the rivers, in the trees. They would echo in the hearts of those who followed, for as long as the earth continued to turn, so too would the memory of the god who had loved it so deeply. As the Dagda lay beneath the hills, a soft light seemed to shine around him, the glow of the moon rising above, casting a silver glow over the world. The land around him settled into stillness, the trees no longer swaying, the winds quieting. The earth itself seemed to exhale in relief, and all was peaceful. The god who had once carried the weight of the world now rested within it, part of the great endless cycle of life and death. Though the Dagda slept, his presence did not fade from the world, for gods such as he do not vanish. Their essence lingers in the very fabric of the land they loved so dearly. His laughter, though quiet now, still echoed through the hills, the rivers, the forests, the winds. It was a sound that could never truly be lost, for it was the heartbeat of the world itself, a heartbeat that would carry on long after the god had lain down his burden. In the years that followed, when the seasons passed and the world continued its slow rhythmic dance, the people of Ireland would still feel the Dagda's presence, in the rustle of the grass on a warm summer's day, in the soft hum of the earth beneath their feet, in the laughter that would occasionally bubble up between them as they sat by the fire. They would know that the good God was not far. He was in the land, in the soil, in the rivers that ran clear and true, His touch was felt in the cycles of life, the planting of seeds, the tending of crops, the laughter shared among friends, the warmth of the hearth. Though the Dagda no longer walked among them in his great physical form, his spirit was as present as the earth itself. The people could feel him, just as they felt the sun rise each day and the moon set each night. His laughter was the breeze that stirred the branches of the ancient trees, the song of the river as it wound its way through the valleys, the crackle of the fire as it warmed their homes. He had become, in a way, the very essence of life. The laughter in the heart of every human, the warmth in every shared meal, the love in every gift freely given. And so, as the world turned, the memory of the Dagda endured. The gods, though their forms may change and their reigns may pass, are never truly gone. They become part of the earth itself, part of the rhythms that govern the world. And for those who knew him, for those who had felt his touch, his laughter would always echo, in the wind, in the earth, in the hearts of those who lived in kindness and abundance. As the firelight flickered and the last of the meal was shared, the people would smile, for they knew that the Dagda's laughter was never truly gone. It was in the winds that whispered through the fields, in the steady rhythm of the river, in the warmth of the hearth. It was the laughter of life itself, a reminder that, no matter what storms may come, the warmth of the earth, the joy of the simple things, would always remain. The Dagda had been the god of plenty, the god of laughter, the god who walked the earth with a heart as full as the soil itself. But even more, he had been the god who understood that the true beauty of life lay in its simplest moments, in the sharing of food, the telling of stories, the warmth of friendship. He had taught the people that abundance was not measured in wealth or power, but in the love shared between them, in the joy found in the simplest acts of kindness. And though he now rested beneath the hills, his laughter lived on. It was the echo of his joy, of his love, of his care for the world. It was a sound that would carry through the ages, a reminder that the earth itself is alive with the spirit of kindness, the spirit of generosity and the spirit of life. And so, in the quiet of the hills, with the moon rising above and the earth settling into its eternal rhythm, the god who was most human became the warmth of the world itself, the light that follows Lu, the warmth that endures. It is the Dagda, his laughter still in the air, his spirit still in the soil, his love still in the hearts of all who live in the abundance of the earth, the hum of wind through grain, the crackle of firelight fading, the slow rhythm of the sea,